Hello, today me and my group members, we're going to present a topic which is economic analysis of climate change policies. And my team members are Anne-Marie, Alessandra, Robin, Mariana, me and Prateek. So first of all, for the introduction, the environmental policy ought to accomplish an effective distribution of resources, wherein the minor social profit by executing strategy is actually balanced by the social expenses. Thus, we need to consider the dilemma of estimating the potential benefits from any initiative that is designed in order to control the climate change policies. So, there have been numerous economists who argued about the global warming and environmental change. One of them is OECD Environment, which basically talks about or estimates the benefits gained by controlling the global warming in USA. This theory it has two scenarios. The first one talks about the temperatures rise for about 2.5 degrees Celsius, whereas the second one it talks about the temperature being 10 degrees Celsius. So the findings suggest that the benefit gained, the benefit that was gained was around 61.6 billion, which is around 1.1% GDP. Which is at least the 60% of the GDP in over 250 to 300 years. So all these theories are based on the club goods. So what are club goods? Club goods are the artificially scarce goods that are excludable and non-right.
So talking about the economic model in a market failure, there is a negative externality as described in the case study. The case study has two scenarios. The first one is a producer producing electricity in which carbon dioxide is a negative externality, and the second producer using alternative fuel to produce electricity which has no negative externality. So the question here is, what is negative externality? So negative externality is the cost that a third party has to suffer so as to have economic transaction, and there are some costs associated with it. So first one is marginal social cost. Marginal social cost is the cost that society has to give up to produce another unit in an economy, and the marginal external cost is difference between marginal social cost and marginal private cost. And the second producer produces electricity using alternative sources. So here the alternative sources are solar energy, wind energy, and nuclear energy.
So we'll be talking about the modeling the negative externality and I'll be doing the representation part, as Robin has already told all the definitions. So we'll be using just three markets. That's my fossil fuels, this is will be my alternative market, and this is my alternative fuel. My combination of both two will give me the aggregate market, I would say, and it will form up. So before doing this, I'm going to be shifting onto the paper to show you how we can do it better, because it will be more better, and we're just going to transfer it to there. So let's move on to the paper. Thank you. So we are forming the modeling and negative externality of greenhouse gases emissions. This is my fossil fuel, this is my alternative fuels, and this is my aggregate market. So till the time we reach this market, it's going to be a connection of the fossil fuel market and the alternative fuel market. So producer in the fossil fuel market, they produce at marginal private cost of the fossil fuels. Same in alternative market, it's marginal private cost equals marginal social cost. And in the aggregate market, when we'll be needing the cost, it will be marginal private cost of SS. That's a market. So let's say at price P, quantity demanded is QF1, or I would say PC. Same goes up to the alternative market, and it gets us to the quantity of QA1, which goes forward and give us a quantity of QC. But in order to get an efficient market, we need a demand curve. So we get demand equals to marginal social benefit curve. This is our equilibrium point. But what happens in the market of fossil fuels and alternative fuels when the taxes are included? The prices go up. So when the prices go up, the supply curve shifts up that are said to be marginal social cost is less now compared to the private cost. And we have the demand curve already, so we get a new equilibrium point. That's our QE1 at price PE. This price PE is because it's the taxes and quantity demanded is QE. Now we can see in the aggregate market the price is going up and the quantity is going down. It's going to get into all the alternative market and the fuel market itself. So at the alternative market, the quantity demanded is now QA2, and in the fossils market, now the quantity demanded, or I would say the quantity supplied, because the private cost was there, now the social cost is to be included, we get a new cost that shifts from QF1 to QF2. This happens because the PC is higher compared to the PE because demanders are now paying the full cost of the consumption activity. This happens when the taxes are included in the economy and the aggregate market has to support the producers so that they can be gainful. And the alternative fuel-based market has risen, as we can see, from QA1 to QA2, but the fossil fuel market has been declining from QF1 to QF2. It's going to the end. So that's the everything concluded. Thank you so much.
I will be explaining to you the reasons why governments implement taxes on the production of these goods. So the good that we have today is electricity, which is being produced from fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels is by burning fossil fuels, you're producing more carbon. So I explained before, there are two methods of producing electricity. One is using fossil fuels and the other one is using alternative energy. Now the reason why these governments implement these taxes is so that they can cause the entities which are producing the units of electricity via the fossil fuels to produce it in ways which are more efficient to the economy. Now, what does that mean? That means that they're looking at measures of being able to produce the good, which is electricity, in such a way that the cost of production is equals to the benefits that the economy itself actually do incur. So moving on, different types of per unit taxes that we will be covering for this case study is the gasoline tax, the carbon tax, and the BTU tax. The BTU tax is just a tax which is based on per units of fuel which is consumed in creating these units of electricity, but is measured in British thermal units. So the gasoline tax is based on the per gallon of gasoline which is used. However, this does not account for different units of other types of fossil fuels which are being used in the production of electricity, such as oil and coal, which do have higher carbon content in it. The two other units of taxes that they're using is the BTU and the carbon tax. Now both of them are used very similarly in the context because the BTU tax, which is based on per unit of fuel, is proportionally equal to the carbon tax, as the percentage of carbon which is emitted from the percentage of carbon which is actually in the fuel is directly proportional to each other. So both of them are used interchangeably in the text. However, the carbon tax is more directed to the means of this production, as it is directly associated with the emission of carbon. Whereas with the BTU tax, that is dependent on the amount of fuel and not necessarily relevant to carbon.
So tradable allowance. So what basically is tradable allowance? So tradable allowance is a tool which is used by the government in order to protect the environment. So the tradable allowance for GHG, which means the greenhouse gas, is the ratio of GHG emissions to the economic output. According to the Kyoto Protocol, so the question here is, what is Kyoto Protocol? So it is basically an international treaty which extends the 1992 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that commits the state parties to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the market works in a similar way as national and worldwide, though which they can achieve their emission targets. So under the Kyoto arrangements,
Don't.
Today I'm going to tell about comparison of government implemented policies. We have two policies like pollution charges and tradable allowance system. Pollution charges, they have benefits and limitations. Benefits such as additional income for the budget of the country. So this per unit charges is an economist where they set budget deficit to help in a country's economy. Another benefit is a long-term reduction of pollution. Agriculture sector is really important for each country. So this sector takes a loss due to the overheating of the environment. So some regions see benefits of longer growth system. Another limitation is per charges tax doesn't set a limit of production. So taxes don't measure all the emitted carbon and don't eliminate the production of the carbon. Another system is tradable allowance system. They have benefits and limitations. The first benefit is excess emission permits to be sold. According to Kyoto Protocol, these countries that manage not to exceed the allowed level of CO2 emissions can sell to another countries who is still struggling with heavy air pollution. Another benefit is political reputation and addressment of the climate. These countries who's gonna care of environment, they will be more powerful, and if we're gonna compare with other countries, and more profitable. Limitation of the system. First limitation is inability to force all members of Kyoto Protocol honors. So some countries gonna be against protocol and hiding some activities and And another limitation is members can leave. So if some requirements is gonna be against the countries, this country is not gonna like it, and maybe this is gonna be against like some business of country, so they will just gonna leave this protocol.
To sum up, government implement policies such as per unit taxes and tradable allowance taxes in order to boost gross domestic product growth and maintain an efficiently functioning society against the emissions of carbon dioxide from electricity production. We see also that it is critical for government to consider long-term effects of the production of this collective good, as short-term effects don't comprehensively account for all effects. So collective good, as we all know, it is non-rival and excludable. You pay for this good, but as soon as you purchase it, you are not preventing others from its consumption. Thus, in order to cut the emissions of carbon dioxide, different taxes are implemented, such as gasoline tax, BTU tax, or carbon tax. However, as the knowledge about it, the real impact on atmosphere and all the consequences is quite limited. It is impossible to predict the full benefits that could arise as a result of global warming. Furthermore, it is still pretty complicated to government to match the social cost of policy controls with possible benefits. Also, all the policies should be followed internationally in order to be extremely efficient. For instance, Montreal Protocol that was implemented to control ozone depletion, and Kyoto Protocol that limits greenhouse gases emissions. And another issue is lack of finances and technology in developing countries, so they are not able to fully participate in all these protocols and successfully implement alternative sources of energy, such as wind and solar power stations.
3.
So consequently, these countries may develop facilities without any improvements towards lowering the level of carbon dioxide emissions, and it could be a large threat for all the programs and protocols. Additionally, because of the negative externality, so the production of these goods has a negative effect on the society. So because of that, producing these goods is a global one, so governments worldwide must work collectively to find a solution. So all in all, despite of all difficulties, there are a lot of issues that were analyzed and alternatives that were developed. Moreover, the researchers continue their work on finding a general solution that will be accepted globally and that will successfully balance benefits and costs.